Warm greetings to everyone. I welcome you all to the session on behalf of URJA, the Commerce Department of Shri Guru Gobind Singh College of Commerce, under the guidance of our esteemed principal, Dr. Jatinder Bir Singh Sir, our convener, Dr. Kaval Gill Ma'am, Head of the Department, Dr. Gurminder Kaur Ma'am, and our faculty. Today, we feel delighted to have this golden opportunity to host one such renowned and distinguished personality who is the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Dr. Krishnamurti Subramanian Sir, as a guest of honor for the session. We welcome you, sir. Founded in 1984, our college is an epitome with a vision to provide a blend of resources and environment for all-round personality and development of its students. It is one of the prestigious institutions of the Delhi University and is renowned as one of the best commerce colleges in India. It is also known for its specialization in the fields of economics and business management. The college offers 8 courses for undergraduate and postgraduate programs, housing around 2,000 students. URJA, the Commerce Department of SGGSCC, having a team of 50 inquisitive students, learning and working in the field of commerce, finance and marketing, with an aim to impact the student community and initiatives for development of each student by sharing and gaining knowledge. We thank everyone for joining us for today's session, and we feel elated to have you all with us. Today, we have our faculty members along with Team URJA on Zoom. I would now request our convener, Dr. Kaval Gill Ma'am, to address the audience and share her words of wisdom on today's session.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to applaud the efforts of URJA team for having invited Dr. K.V Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India, for an exclusive webinar cum interview. The college feels elated with your presence, sir. Well, when I saw the formal invitation with your photograph, the first impression was that you look very young. Indeed, you look young. So this is a compliment to you from us, not delaying it further. I like to just give my brief remarks on today's theme. The theme of the webinar is Future of Economic Progress and Prospective Role of India. The United Nations has declared that COVID-19 presents the greatest test for humanity since World War II. Just a few days after China reported its first COVID-19 related death in January 20, the World Economic Forum published its first, not the first, but its annual global risk report, warning that health systems worldwide are underprepared for significant outbreaks of infectious diseases. The report also outlined challenges related to the looming climate catastrophe, noted an increase in cyber attacks, and detailed economic conditions that aggravate inequality. According to another report by the Lancet Commission on Pollution and Health, environmental pollution has reduced annual global economic output by 6.2% and has caused roughly 9 million premature deaths. Workers in some cities now spend an average of 1 to 2 work weeks per year stuck in traffic jams. Wealth inequality has increased, and personal, corporate, and sovereign debt levels have also reached new heights. The global geopolitical landscape has shifted to a multi-conceptual framework where traditional singular ideas about how best to look after world affairs have splintered into multiple approaches and conflicting agendas. The increased prevalence of protectionist trade policies and a broad decline of commitments to rules-based multilateralism are upending the global order established after World War II. US-China trade conflict is a leading example. The innovation fueling the fourth industrial revolution, in addition to threatening to create new social divisions, is also raising questions about traditional economic assumptions related to productivity, work, education, and the means of adequately gauge our progress. The combination and breadth of global challenges now demands immediate collective action. Yet, fractures in the global community are at risk of only widening further. As a result, we must explore ways to update our economic models and systems in order to ensure they can deliver positive outcomes for the largest possible number of people for the foreseeable future. Uh, to deliberate on the above challenges, we have invited Dr. K.V Subramanian to listen to his expert views on defining the future of economic progress in terms of achieving better global health, better sustainability, more inclusive development, and revived productivity growth. And of course, how he sees India contributing to all this. But before I really invite him to speak, I would invite our respected principal, Sir, Dr. Jatinder B. Singh, for his welcome remarks. Thank you.
I'm very elated to welcome Dr. K.V Subramanian, who is going to talk on the future of economic reforms and what is the India's role in the economic progress. As we all know that India is now placed at a very delicate position. We are ready for the takeoff. What we in economics we call it Rostovian stage of takeoff. For many years, we have not been able to break the barrier to actually go into the takeoff stage. We have now the sympathetic regime. The government is committed to reform the processes, and we are reforming the policy regime so that we can unleash the animal spirits of the corporate sector, along with the benevolent government regime, public policy. As a result of the policies, the product market and the capital market and the labor market reforms have been introduced. Right from 1991, I was reading one of the pieces of Dr. Subramanian where he talked about in 1991 onwards, we had the product market reforms, and the IBC, the banking sector reform is tackling with the capital market issues, and now when we introduce, certain states have introduced the labor market reforms where you have the policy that you can hire and they can exit from the labor market. So these are the reforms. Probably COVID provided us an opportunity where we could not do it with a democratic process. Some of the things we could not do, we would debate. We will not be able to do those things. But this particular opportunity that has been provided to us, let's say that with the kind of development that are taking place, we are able to come out of that logjam that we have found ourselves in. And that our economy, we all know, which is actually at we have per capita income about $2,000, and we have the ability potential to grow at the rate of about 8 to 9%. And that really doubles up in 8 to 9 years. If we talk about 2 decades of persistent economic growth, then we'll be in the range of $8 to $10,000 in 2 decades. China is already into that range. So we have long arduous task of reforming our economy. Things are not so easy because we have a social dynamics of qualities such that it's not easy. Just to tell Dr. Subramanian, we have had the chance to invite Dr. Kaushik Basu also at one point of time, and when we met him in the North Avenue office, he told us how it's not easy in the dynamic in the politics, social political scene to easily get through the reforms that economists actually it is so darling to them. So we have massive challenges, economic opportunities. We have problems like migration, illiteracy, malnutrition, and another problem that emerging in nationalism versus globalization. So amidst all these challenges, how economic progress is going to be unleashing, and what is going to be India's role? Do we grab the opportunities and able to take ourselves into middle middle income group countries, or how fast we grow, how slow we grow, and how we grab the opportunities. I think nobody else can tell us better than Dr. K.V Subramanian. I welcome you, sir, on the college behalf, and we have had the opportunities of calling many economists of repute, right from Bimal Jalan to Sanjeev Anand. Also, last year he had come over. So we are College of Commerce and Economics. So economists are very dear to us. So that's in this regard. That's why we thought we must hear from you, from somebody who is so well trained and at actually a place which can make a change to Indian economy. So I'm very happy that the students have organized this webinar, and all the students of Delhi University and our college will be looking forward to hearing.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your precious words. Proceeding on, we feel honored and privileged to have Dr. Subramanian, sir, as a guest for the session. Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, currently the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, is a leading expert on economic policy, banking and corporate governance. He obtained a BTech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur and a PGDM from IIM Calcutta. He pursued his PhD from Chicago Booth and was awarded the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation Dissertation Fellowship, which is an award given to top 20 PhD scholars across all disciplines. Dr. Subramanian has authored various surveys, which include the Path-Breaking Economic Survey, which commends ethical wealth creation for a prosperous India, and the 2019 Economic Survey, which laid out the strategic blueprint for India to become a $5 trillion economy. He has previously been an assistant professor of finance at Emory University in Atlanta, USA, and has worked with leading financial firms such as ICICI and JP Morgan Chase. He has also served on several expert committees for the Reserve Bank of India and Securities and Exchange Board of India. It will be a pleasure to listen to his golden words on the theme Future of Economic Progress, Prospective Role of India. We will now give the space to Sir.
Very good morning, everyone, and thanks to the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts on the global economy and India's role in it. I think it's needless to be to mention that this particular crisis, the crisis created by COVID, is completely unprecedented. Just to give one fact, if you look at the World Economic Outlook that's been published by the IMF, one of the facts that stands out is that if you look at the proportion of countries where the GDP per capita will decline this year, that number is the largest in the last 150 years. So we are actually witnessing an episode that is unprecedented. But India is among those few countries that has really looked to convert this crisis into an opportunity. And that's where the seminal reforms that have been launched by the Indian government really stands out. I quite agree with what the principal mentioned about the difficulty in doing reforms, which I'll come to in a minute. But let me first describe the key reforms that have been undertaken over the last few months, but over the last 6 years in particular, because this has been a period of important reforms. So if you look at the path of reforms in India since 1991 up until around 2004, the pace of reforms was very, very strong, and it was focused on product market reforms. So what we essentially did was opened up the product markets, enabled more entry and thereby competition in the product markets, and that was something which really enabled us to to increase our our growth significantly. Something that we covered in the economic survey of January 2020, illustrating the significant value that got generated by through economic reforms. Now, if you take a look at the reforms that have been done since 2014, I start with the bankruptcy code, the RERA, Real Estate Regulation Act, the GST implementation, the labor reforms now, the agriculture reforms, which are even more seminal, the Farm Bill, far more seminal than even the labor reforms. When you put all these together, what these really imply is these are factor market reforms. And you all as students of commerce and economics would understand the difference between factor inputs and output. Or the product. The reforms that had happened up until 2004. 2004 to 2014 was a period where there were no reforms that were carried out. So there's not much of a point actually discussing that. But before 2004, we had reforms primarily on the product markets. 2014 onwards, the reforms have been focused primarily on the product markets, on the factor markets. So capital, for instance, which is one of the key factors of production, the IBC was an important step in reforming that, because without the bankruptcy code, we had promoters who basically used to take loans but could get away without having to repay that, and the bill for such unethical conduct had to be put by depositors and then eventually the taxpayers of the country. So that reform, for capital was extremely important. The one nation, one tax attempt through the GST, was an effort to try and create a large market, domestic market, by integrating all the different state economies together through a one tax regime. Now, when you look at the set of reforms that have been launched in the last few months, especially after the COVID pandemic has hit, the two things that really stand out are the labor market reforms and agriculture market reforms. Labor market reforms are extremely critical, on two dimensions. One, I remember the time when I was in school. This is almost 30 years back. When when IMF gave India its loan in 1991 for India to tide over its balance of payments crisis, one of the conditionalities of that loan was that India would undertake labor market reforms. India has been talking about labor market reforms for the last 3 decades, and it actually did not do it. This is the first time that it has been done, and it is important from an economic perspective because the significant restrictions and the very inefficient labor regulation that we had ensured that only a very small portion of the workforce, small component of the workforce, could work in the organized sector, because the employer, if he or she could not cater employment to the demand conditions, then he or she would be quite reluctant to hire organized labor, because that creates a fixed cost, if he cannot cater the employment to demand conditions. So that thereby reduced the hiring of employees in the organized workforce, and really blocked generation of employment. So as a result, only 11% of the workforce in India was in the organized sector, 89% in the unorganized sector. And there is no better form of inclusion, whether it's social inclusion or economic inclusion, than one person in a family getting a job in the formal sector, because that uplifts the entire family. Once you have a good salary in the organized sector, the surety of income that comes actually really uplifts the entire family, creates opportunities for education for kids, improves their health outcomes, and in general uplifts. So employment is something that is extremely important for the, for the growth of an economy, especially creation of a large middle class. So that did not happen, and now the opportunity is there for such employment to happen, especially in the manufacturing sector. Just a few details on the on these reforms. So before these reforms, there were about 44 different laws that govern the employer-employee relationship, and across these 44 different pieces of regulation, things like wages, salary, strike, bonus, all these were defined in different ways across these 44 pieces of legislation, which made compliance really a nightmare from the employer's perspective, and provided significant opportunities for inspectors, labor inspectors, to extract rents from this. Now, instead of 44 laws and more than 1,000 odd sections, what we have now are only 4 codes. So from 44 to 4 codes, and the number of sections down significantly. As a result, the compliance burden becomes much lower. Similarly, if you look at minimum wages, before these changes, there were about 2,200 minimum wages defined in the country. And just imagine, having to be compliant across each of those 2,200 minimum wages, what a compliance nightmare it was. And the enormous opportunity for unethical rent seeking by inspectors. Now those 2,200 odd minimum wages have been condensed into about just 40 odd minimum wages. So orders of magnitude decrease in the number of minimum wages, and so much better compliance can result from that. The ability to hire people on contractual employment, and contractual employment having the same benefits as full-time employment, no difference in terms of the benefits enjoyed, actually provides the flexibility, and thereby also empowers the employee, but at the same time also provides the opportunity for significant employment creation. So I think these are very important piece of reforms. The second important piece of reform is the agriculture reform farm bill, and so this is a very important piece of reform, because despite more than 70 years of independence, each one of us as producers or citizens had the freedom to do what we wanted. Especially producers, other producers except the farmer had the freedom to go and sell his or her produce, in whichever place he or she wanted. Except the farmer did not have that freedom. He had to go and sell it to the local mandi, be subject to the to the squeezing of the last drop of his blood, figuratively, by the adatya, by the intermediary, who only made money by being the intermediary. Not all the hard work was done by the farmer, and the rents were extracted by the adatya, by the intermediary, who basically wrapped especially the small farmer in a web of debt, and thereby kept the small farmer beholden to this intermediary, and generated a much higher share of the surplus, disproportionate to his contribution in the relationship. And so pure rent seeking by these intermediaries, that's what kept the small farmer really poor, impoverished, and completely vulnerable. Very little investment in the farm sector as a result of such inefficiencies. APMCs themselves actually, not much money coming in at all, but ended up being a cash cow for a lot of states, which just, and especially the state of Punjab, where the levies that were imposed on the APMC mandis, which initially were supposed to be about half a percentage point, 0.5%, but had increased to about 8%, and thereby became a cash cow for the for the state government. And that's what actually you can see is the genesis of the opposition, which has to these farm bills, which has been primarily from that one state, of Punjab. So this is basically something that's a very important piece of reform. And it can really enable the farmer, especially the small farmer, to benefit from this. Because think about it, when you go to buy or sell something, if there is only one buyer, whatever you're producing, that one buyer has monopsony power. I'm sure you all have learned monopolies and monopsony. When you have only one buyer, that's a monopsony, and that is what prevailed in the farming setting, where the adathya or the intermediary based, in the local mandi, was the monopsonist and extracted all the surplus in that relationship, leaving the small farmer impoverished. But now with these reforms, what can happen is that the small farmer can tell that adathya, the intermediary, that मैंने आपको नहीं बेचना है, actually मैं जाके किसी और को बेच सकता हूँ, मैं ITC को बेच सकता हूँ, Reliance को बेच सकता हूँ, आपको नहीं खरीदना हो, आपने सही पैसा नहीं देना तो मैंने नहीं बेचना आपको. And that freedom, that power to the small farmer, who does not have to be now beholden to that intermediary, I think is a very, very important change. Brings the and can generate really a lot of value added and productivity in the agriculture sector. So I think that's also a very important piece of reform. Now let me actually comment on something that the principal mentioned about the difficulty of reforms. But I think what is really standing out now is that such difficult reforms have indeed been accomplished now. Let's think about the political economy of reforms in a democracy like India. Whenever you think about reforms, reforms really involve a sort of a conflict between two sets of stakeholders. One, which is a silent majority, which are the primary beneficiaries of the reform, silent majority, the citizens of the country, versus a vocal minority that has benefited from the status quo, who have enjoyed the rents, disproportionate amount of rents from the status quo, even though it actually hurts the entire country. It has benefited this small minority, and that small minority therefore opposes, because they know very well that unka dhanda pani actually is going to get affected. So the opposition comes from a vocal minority, which also ends up, typically, because they've benefited from the status quo, they're also, generally influential, while the silent majority is, does not have as much influence, and in fact, the benefits also will accrue over time. In contrast, the costs to this vocal minority, they know it's going to be immediate. As a result, the opposition that comes is far more vocal, because it comes from this vocal minority which has benefited from status quo and wants that status quo to perpetuate, no change to happen, because it serves their narrow interests. So reform actually requires that the larger good of the entire country is focused on, and not and not those of the interests, the narrow interests of a vocal minority. That is what reform really requires, and which then mandates a significant amount of conviction and political will to be able to carry those reforms. If you take just 3 examples, where take IBC, take labor reform and the agriculture reform, each one of them involves this opposition from the vocal minority that had benefited from the status quo versus a silent majority. So reform in each of these cases actually demonstrates the conviction and the political will, to be able to do what is right for the country. I think, even if that means that those that have vested interests, will oppose, but explaining to the country at large that those that are opposing do not necessarily have the nation's, total interest at heart. And by the way, this is also something, some of the attempts by some states to try and undermine the reforms at the central level. Eventually these states will basically, will lose out, because what will happen is that the farmer who has opportunities, created by these reform in other states, will move to those states, and where the benefits are greater, and that is basically how. So eventually, these attempts to actually undermine these reforms by state level legislation will hurt that state. Something that hopefully some of the debate there also actually raises questions like this: that is this really in the interest of the state itself? So I think, and I bring this to your attention because I see a lot of people who actually who are, I think, natives from Punjab here, who possibly can take this to highlight this aspect, because this is very important reform that is actually good for the small farmer. And I think so now when you think about, when you put these reforms together, what it really does is it enables two sectors of the economy which has not had as much productivity improvements over the last 70 odd years, which is your primary sector of the economy and the secondary sector. Primary is basically agriculture and secondary manufacturing. Both these sectors have significant potential to generate jobs for the large number of youth in this country. In the last 30 years, India has done very well in the tertiary sector, which is the services sector, but has not done enough in the primary and the secondary sector. These reforms will enable to unleash productivity and thereby jobs and investment, in the primary and secondary sectors, and will be very good for productivity improvements. And so, these can thereby enable India to achieve that goal of becoming a $5 trillion economy, and thereby, become a dominant player in the global economic order. So I think, to summarize, these are very important, steps to enable India to occupy its deserved place in the Committee of Nations on the, from an economic perspective. And I think our 10-15 years later, people will look back at these reforms and say that these were very important in the, in the Indian economic history. Finally, let me underline what is the key idea behind these reforms. It is about really going back to India's DNA. What has been India's DNA? Unlike the perception that India had a socialistic past. Yes, India did pursue socialism for 40-50 years, but when you look at India's much larger history, we are a very, very old civilization. If you read the research by Angus Maddison did this hard work of documenting the GDP of each country over the last 2,000 years. So the entire period after Christ, and has shown that for 3/4 of known economic history, so in other words, up till 1750 AD, that's 17.5 centuries, India accounted for more than 1/3 of world's GDP, more than 1/3 of world's GDP. Now, many of us may actually think about these as just some facts, but think about what that means in terms of dominance by using the following comparison. We all acknowledge that the United States is the dominant economic superpower, in the world, right? Now think about actually these two aspects. How long has it been the dominant superpower, and what has its contribution to world GDP been? The US has been has been the superpower, economic superpower for half a century now, half a century. Okay. So take that half a century, contrast it with 17 and a half centuries. So, put those on the weighing scale. Those are the first two, that's the first set of comparison. Second, in terms of contribution to world GDP, India in this 17 and a half centuries actually accounted for more than 1/3 of world GDP, more than 33%. At its peak, the United States has contributed about 15-16% of world's GDP, less than half of what India did over 17 and a half centuries. So when you put both these facts together, half a century contributing about 15-16%, and that itself makes us wow, saying, oh, US has actually done so well. Now compare that with 17 and a half centuries of more than 33% consistently to contribution to world GDP, then you will actually say it should be a much bigger, oh wow, because that's what really the comparison is. And why is it that India was able to generate that kind of dominance? Such kind of dominance does not come about just by sheer accident. It comes from very careful, clear thinking and really pursuing policies that actually generate are economically optimal. That came from respecting private enterprise, enabling trade. If you go and read as disparate literature as Arthashastra, which is read by a lot of people in the north, or Tirukkural, which is read by a lot of people in the south. The Arthashastra written in Sanskrit, Tirukkural written in Tamil, my native language. But as disparate literature as these, you still find, and these are many of these written 3,100 years back, you find wealth creation, especially ethical wealth creation, being commended as the most important pursuit. And it's also actually seen in this, when one thinks about the four noble pursuits, which is dharma, arth, kama, moksha, in that artha is talked about as a noble pursuit, but in an ethical manner. And that has been advocated in the Indian context by the combination of private enterprise trade, which is, in today's language, many of you would have been exposed to Adam Smith's work about the invisible hand of markets. It's a different matter that what Adam Smith actually advocated is only 100 years old, while this literature has talked about private enterprise and the invisible hand of markets without those exact same words for the last 3,500, 4,000 years. So far more, far longer, and combining that with the hand of trust. So the combination of the invisible hand of markets with the hand of trust, which itself derives its vitality from the very deep spiritual and cultural traditions that India had. So ethics was something that was emphasized a lot, and therefore ethical wealth creation, in other words, the means to attaining wealth, were emphasized as much as the end. It is not important that somebody just became rich. How did that person become rich? Did he or she became rich by acquiring wealth the right way, ethically, was emphasized as much. And that is something which now India is returning back to through the emphasis not only on markets and wealth creation, but wealth creation in the right way. Making sure that unethical ways of wealth creation are actually clamped down upon, and essentially India is returning back to its DNA in really pursuing ethical wealth creation by enabling the invisible hand of markets, private enterprise, together with doing it actually with the hand of trust. So I think that is what the key idea behind the current reforms is, and even though India dabbled with socialism for some time, it's good to see that we are actually going back to DNA, and which is these timeless economic principles that have been demonstrated to generate prosperity not only in India but across the world. In India, of course, for many centuries and millennia. So I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable views, and I'm sure this was really insightful to the attendees. So without taking much time, we shall move ahead to another segment, that is the question and the answer round. I would now like to hand over to Ratandeep to proceed on with this segment.
I'm pretty sure that everyone had a great time listening to you, sir, on how India can play a very important role in the economic future of the world. So, sir, I jotted down some questions from your speech, and if you give me the permission, I'll ask them to you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, sir, I really can't agree more that India should achieve its rightful place in the world. As you said that we were 1/3 of the world's GDP about 200 years back, 200, 300 years back. And it feels that the present government has done a lot of reforms to achieve that goal. But it really feels that the government is just hammering through one reform after the another, which is causing a lot of disruptions. Take the real estate sector, for example. So first there was a sentiment breaker in the form of demonetization. Then we had RERA. Then we had GST. So all these three big bang reforms in quick succession actually broke down the momentum of a sector which brought in a lot of investment for the economy. So how should the government do all these reforms and simultaneously help to soften the impact of these reforms?
Firstly, I think, as I said, the emphasis is on ethical wealth creation. And whether we like it or not, we have to acknowledge that there was a lot of dirt in the real estate sector.
Yes.
And cleaning up that dirt is something that actually is required. And when you clean up the dirt, when you, for instance, you do Diwali cleaning as well. When you clean up the dirt, some of the dirt will actually, unfortunately, come to the air. And that is something. Yes. But saying that we will continue and will not clean up is something that is not consistent with ethical wealth creation. If you look at the period before 2014, the asset bubbles that got built up, and there are many examples now. So this is something which is actually like a surgery that is required, very, very important, which is good for the sector itself, because what will happen is, as a result, those players that want to play the right way, will be strengthened, and those players that want to play dirty will actually be weakened. I think that is something that is inevitable. Disruption in any area is something that creates some short-term pain and long-term gain. I think the policies have to be, should not be those that create short-term gain and long-term pain, which is what a lot of the policies before 2014 were, which they created short-term gain and long-term pain. In contrast, these policies are ones which create some short-term, pain, and that short-term pain is primarily, there isn't that much short-term pain for those that actually were doing business, absolutely ethically. For them, there is no problem at all. It is for those who actually now had to modify and actually and change their methods, which I think is desirable, because if India has to really progress and occupy its deserved place in the Committee of Nations, the current business as usual चलता है, जैसे भी पैसा कमाओ, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, चलता है, that cannot continue. I think that is something which, and so this is important. Some short-term pain, जैसे दवाई आप लेते हो तो दवाई थोड़ी कड़वी होती है, लेकिन वो सेहत अच्छा करती है, ये वैसा ही है.
Got it, sir. Sir, talking about agricultural reform, the mandis were indeed a monopoly, and the reason very well was that the membership of these mandis was regulated by the APMC of those respective states. So why didn't we simply open up the membership of these mandis to each and everyone, so that any person from big corporates to these middlemen and even a simple person come to these mandis and buy up the produce, rather than simply doing away with the system as that has been established at that.
आप बताओ. Tell me why. You're an economics student.
Yes, sir.
You have, suppose there is something, let me give you a parallel. Let's say you have maybe 10 years back, you're a kid and your parents have gotten a lot of sweets. Now you and maybe your sibling actually can have all the sweets. But suppose your parents say, मैं सारे मोहल्ले के सारे लड़कों को बुला देता हूँ या बच्चों को बुला देता हूँ, तो क्या होगा आपका? Your mithai actually will, which you and your sibling could have enjoyed it all. Will you want anybody else to come and share those mithais with you?
No, definitely.
Will you be the ones who says, who'll say, नहीं चलिए सारे मोहल्ले के सबको बुलाओ, actually सबके साथ share करते हैं. आप क्या करोगे? Actually, this, it's if you are being narrow-minded, you'll say, no, actually, I want to have all the mithai myself. And that is what. So the vested interest, those that were benefiting, जो मिठाई अच्छे से खुद खा रहे थे, actually उनको किसी को उन्होंने तो share नहीं करना था कि सारी मिठाई अपने पास ही रखनी थी उनको. So the only way therefore is to basically open up the system and say that let's do away, because for 75 years, if it had to happen, it would have happened. And why did it not happen? Because it's also those जो मिठाई अच्छा खा रहे थे, they were the ones who actually also were important from the votes, because उसमें से कुछ मिठाई actually आगे भी ऊपर भी जाती थी, और and that's how the system got sustained. So this is basically something that was required. Otherwise, जब जो चीज 74 साल में नहीं हुई, वो कैसे हो सकती थी?
Really agree with that, sir. So, sir, we have some prepared questions for you. So, I have your permission, I'll ask them.
Sure.
So, sir, you have had a taste of a multitude of fields at such a young age. So, how did the experience change as you went from being a banker to an academician and then a top-ranking government official? And what were the key things that you learned along the way?
Very good question. I think, first thing I would like to acknowledge, and I think any person who gets an opportunity to contribute like this has to be humble enough to acknowledge that there is some role of luck as well, which nobody can deny. I think that's the most important thing. I'm not saying that, that the lesson for all of you should be to just only rely on, luck. You should work very hard. But I think, to claim that everything is all, without any role of luck, I think would not be correct. That's not the. So I think that's the first thing that I must. Oftentimes being at the right place at the right time is what luck is all about. And I've had my share of that. But second thing, I think what when I look at some of my key learnings and what I might share with some of you, some things that I think might be useful for all of you to reflect upon is clarity of objective. From a young age, even when I was in college, for me, what I wanted to do with my life, what was my objective in life, I had enormous clarity on that. For instance, what are the things that I did not want to pursue? I think clarity is also in not only knowing what you want to do, which sometimes you grow into it, but knowing what does not appeal to you, what you don't want to spend your life on, is also very useful. To give you one example, for instance, even when I was in college, like you all are, I was very clear that I don't want to be spending my life just pursuing money. For me, it was, if my only ambition in life is to be rich, it shows an extreme poverty of ambition. So, I did not want to have that poverty of ambition to say, I only want to earn money, because money is finally just the means, it's not the end. I think that clarity I had, so that helped. Second, related also, I in terms of what I wanted to, the objective of, I also wanted to actually have the satisfaction, my own inner satisfaction of saying that I contributed to society. That was something that was very important for me. Relatedly, I think a third aspect is that I was very clear that I want to live life on my terms, not on somebody else's terms. In other words, I want to define what is success, in my own terms. for me, just because 99.9% of humanity thinks, let's say, that being rich is successful, for me, that was not the definition of success. It's a different matter that may have come along actually, but I was very clear that I had to have my definition of success, and my definition of success was being able to contribute to society. So I think clarity on these things was very important, and therefore I was able to make choices that are not the standard ones, which is standard ones of once you do basically go work for the corporate, and then you run the rat race actually for so I think that I was able to avoid, because I had a good sense of what I wanted to achieve in my life. So that's one key piece of learning that I would provide to you all. Second is, I think that if if your goal is to contribute, sort of more an external orientation, which is rather than I, me, myself kind of goals, oh, I want to become X, I want to become Y, or something, this thing has to happen. Instead saying, oh, I want to do something for society. I think that is something that helps you. I think it doesn't make you that sort of that it liberates you, in my opinion, in terms of what you want to do. You don't pursue the same sort of you don't pursue the herd. You have the courage to actually take unconventional paths if you have an objective like that. Also, I think this may seem a little I don't know whether you'll understand, because it's something which speaking from a kind of spiritual point of view, I think that if you're pursuing a larger goal, the universe supports you. You can think about it as universe, the almighty, or when you actually have goals that are not just about you, your family, and when you have larger goals, I think the universe supports you. I mean that it's very hard for me to prove anything like this. It's a matter of belief. It's a matter of faith, but that's something which I've seen reflected in my life. So just to summarize, I think that I would say that first thing, be clear about what you want to do in your life. It's lifespan is about 80 years. It's a short lifespan. Time passes by. It seems like only yesterday I was in school, like you all. And so utilize time, have a good clear objective of what you want to do in life. And I think there should be some aspect of doing something for others, deriving satisfaction. I think the way your sort of your heart feels full when you do something for beyond you or your immediate family is a very very nice feeling. So I think that's basically what I would recommend to you all, all of you who are young.
Indeed, sir. Really lovely to hear you talking about these things, and we really wish you success in each and everything that you do in the future and you're doing.
Thank you.
So moving on to our next question. What was your overall experience as the CEA, and how did you feel when you were tabling your first economic survey in the parliament, and what was the feeling when you were preparing it?
First of all, this may sound cliched, but actually, I am speaking from my heart. I just find it an enormous privilege to be able to contribute, to be able to interact with the highest functionaries in the government. I think it's a real privilege. That's the first thing I actually, and I every day I step into North Block, I remind myself of that, of how much of a privilege it is, to get to spend time with the senior people, who are shaping history. I think to basically make a small contribution to to that is, I think, just enormously fulfilling. So that was the first thing that that's the first thought that used to come to me when I was working on the first economic survey, to that I should try and do my very best. And I think relatedly, one of the other things that helps is that I have always believed in putting my best effort and realizing that the outcome is not in my hands. In some sense, this is the shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur buhu mate sangostva karmani, which is that you have the right to do your effort, but the result is not determined by you. I think that's something that helped. I wanted to do my best, and of course I have a very very capable, very committed team, and a lot of the credit for basically the survey and the work on that actually goes to the team. They really work very hard during the time of the economic survey to put together lots of people staying back till late in the night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, going back at such odd hours, and then coming back again early in the morning for almost like 1.5 2 months. So they just work very very hard. So I think it feels very it feels very satisfying to see those happy faces when the survey gets tabled and people say that okay, the effort was a good one. I think to see the satisfaction among is something that really genuinely gladdens my heart. So those were the key feelings. Of course, to be honest with you, the first time you always are a little nervous. That's inevitable. That you want to do a good job, and I think some bit of nervousness is good, because it also suggests that you really care. You care to actually do a good job, and so I was a little nervous as well. For instance, walking into the to Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and seeing Madam Finance Minister table that economic survey. It was just a surreal experience, the first time. I think these are memories that will last for a lifetime for me.
Sir, I really like that thing when you said that whenever you enter the steps of the North Block, you are going there and you are creating history that will be remembered for lifetimes to come. That was, the best thing from.
No, I didn't say I am creating history. I'm actually playing my small part in others who are actually, creating history. I've always thought about, there's this Harsha Bhogle, the famous commentator, used to say, when people asked him what his role was to make Sunil Gavaskar look better, because it's Sunil Gavaskar, who's the cricketer, and Harsha Bhogle is basically is a commentator. Similarly, I am the advisor. So it's the people who are doing the work are the ministers and the bureaucrats. So but to be actually of help to them is something that really that's a unique privilege.
Indeed, sir, it is. So, sir, considering that you have in the past proposed very innovative systems to measure the welfare state of the Indian economy, one such system was Thalinomics. So, would you please explain our audience about it in a brief, in some brief?
See, the basic idea, in both the economic surveys has been that economics is eventually something that affects the common person. It is if prices of commodities, employment, inflation, all these actually impact the common person. And yet economics is oftentimes made to be a very esoteric subject. So one of my, my humble efforts has been to try and make, the economic survey reach the common person, have the common person relate to ideas in the economic survey. For instance, in the July 2019 economic survey, we actually wrote on the behavioral economics of nudge, and acknowledging that 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 economics is finally about, human interactions, at the macroeconomic level. It's actually humans doing transactions with each other. And we're all Homo economicus actually tends to portray human beings as robots who don't have feelings, and who don't have biases, etc. So this was an idea to try and recognize the biases and the intrinsic nature of humans, and how policy can therefore actually cater to that. In that same spirit, the Thalinomics, the idea there was that if you take any common person or any person, one thing that the person encounters every day is a plate of thali, at least twice a day. And so what better way than relating economics to a common person than the thali, when he or she sits down with his family to eat. Can we basically put out an index of how much that thali has become cheaper or has become costlier, and therefore a way for the common person to assess in something like inflation in the country, because inflation is a rate of growth. Common people, it's expressed in percentage terms. Many common people cannot understand, inflation 8% inflation, 9% inflation. But something as simple as yes, last month I paid about, let's say, 20 rupees for a vegetarian thali, and this month I'm paying 22 rupees, is actually far simpler for people to understand. So that was the basic idea, and thereby saying that but at the same time, for instance, the Punjabi thali is very different from the South Indian thali, because the ingredients are different. Can we actually create this index by really taking into account the diversity that exists in India, and yet be able to relate economics to not only a Tamilian but a Punjabi, Bengali, Assamese, Gujarati, Awadhi, all these kinds of people, and across the length and breadth of the country. That was the basic idea in this.
Got it, sir. So, sir, as we all know that you completed your PhD from the Chicago Booth School, and this school has by far have had the most significant impact on modern day economics and finance. So how does it feel to be associated with a school of such repute and honor?
I feel very humbled, to be honest. I recall when I joined the PhD program, the very first class that I had was microeconomics, that was taught by Professor Gary Becker, the 1992 Nobel laureate. Some of you may be surprised, but I literally was pinching my myself and saying, the first class to be taught by a Nobel laureate. It's incredibly humbling. But at the same time, as my advisor used to say, one of the best things of being in a place like University of Chicago is that you get to see greatness in flesh and blood. And when you see greatness in action, great people in action, and you then see that what is it that makes them so great? They're also human beings like us. But what is often extraordinary about such people is the extraordinary passion that they bring to what they do, and they combine that with extraordinary work ethic. I think to see some of that, I think in such close proximity is what I actually think about as a real privilege. Because it's one thing to be told by somebody else, but another thing to actually see them. I think that is by far the most important. For instance, Professor Gary Becker, when he was teaching at that time, he used to be in his 80s then. He was already in his 80s, and yet he used to come and teach. So there used to be a chair kept for him, so he would go on the board, write what has to be written on the board, then sit and lecture. So I think when you see things like that, this is a beauty of humankind, that when you see goodness in action, it's just saying, oh, I want to be like that. I want to, when I am in my 80s, I want to be also as passionate, I want to be as hardworking, and I think that is, seeing such goodness in action, I think inspires you enormously. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway for me from the University of Chicago. Of course, I think being taught by so many Nobel laureates is also something that it changes the way you think. I think for me, when I look at it, that's the biggest takeaway. It's also sort of sets higher goals for yourself. Saying that I want to maybe make my small contribution to thinking about to shaping thinking. I think your aspirations also get set by the people that you feel inspired by. So I think these are all very, very, very important privileges that I enjoyed by going to a place like the University of Chicago.
So, listening to you, I will say that we all really feel so inspired that to see your own greatness in your own flesh and bones in this virtual medium. So it's a huge honor.
Thank you. I'm humbled.
So, sir, time and again that we see that globally educated economists are brought in by the government at the apex level of decision making, be it the last 2-3 CEAs and even including you. So, what are the unique things that the foreign educated economists bring to the government that our own officials can't? And why can't Indian institutions of economics and finance provide the government with the talent that it's looking for in foreign educated economy?
No, I don't think I would want to actually label it that way. For instance, in my own case, while I did study at the University of Chicago, and I lived in the United States for about a decade. The remaining part of my life, actually more than 4 decades, has been spent. Actually, more than 3 decades has been spent in India. So about a decade in the in the US and more than 3 decades in India. So similarly with the others, I think if I'm honest, the quality of training is something that you get to read the cutting edge literature. I think in the top places. I think if you look at the graduate education in some of the top places in India, it is very good, no doubt about that. But I think there is still some distance we have to go in terms of catching up with the research productivity. So you are taught by people who are engaged in cutting edge research, who are contributing to cutting edge research, not only in India but across the world. I think that is something that actually, I guess, gives you a global perspective. That is not to say that there are, I think, enough number of functionaries in India who are trained here and yet have made enormous impact. So there is nothing exclusive about this. It is just I think maybe having that global perspective is something that helps. But in some sense, if you look at many of the other positions, those are in government and among the regulatory agencies, those are manned by people, outstanding people who are trained in India. So the CEA role that you're picking up is sort of maybe and maybe over the last few instances have been people who have been trained abroad. But before that, there are a lot of people trained here who also contributed well. So there is, I think, all that one should be looking for is actually passion, commitment, and capability. And passion, commitment, and capability have no geographical boundaries or boundaries like that.
Really agree with that, sir. So, sir, I have some questions that are more about your life and not about issues like this. So I really hope that you'll enjoy them. So in your TED talk, you talk about having the stomach to make sacrifices and build resilience. So what advice would you give to today's generation, the Generation Z, for whom it's very easy to pursue instant gratification, which ultimately in the long run might end up in a lot of wasted potential?
See, I think, if you let me say the following. At the core of economics is what is called a trade-off, that there are costs and benefits. If you want to enjoy some benefits, you have to have some costs. So if you want to, and the same thing applies to your life as well, if you want to achieve something, you have to actually be willing to pay those costs in terms of delaying gratification. So I don't think it is wise to think that I will have my cake and eat it too, which is that I will not work hard, and yet all the good things will come to me. I think that is something that does not happen in life. Success comes only after hard work, and I say this with enormous conviction, having seen the best people. One of my life's privileges has been to see, whether it's policy makers, top policy makers, Nobel laureates, top CEOs, and encountering many of them, and that if there's one thing that stands out, is that no person has been able to be successful without having to put in the hard yards. So I think that's a credo that all of you should remember. In fact, a book that I would highly recommend all of you to read, there's lots of examples like that, which is, the title of that book is Talent is Overrated. It is about actually, success requires some sacrifice, in terms of effort. So I think if you want to have a, if you want to basically, have instant gratification, then do remember that, the outcomes that may come may not necessarily be what you would like. So you have to settle for that. That's a choice that you make. But if you want, let's say, very good outcomes, in future, then you have to actually be willing to make that sacrifice now. There are no two ways about it.
Can't agree more with that, sir. So another question, sir. What was the most difficult choice that you had to make in life? And if you are given the power to go back in time, what is that one decision that would change? That you would change?
Well, let me answer the second part of the question. If I have to live my life again, I possibly would want to make the same choices. And in fact, I would want to have the same failures also again, because I have seen that failures teach you far, far more than successes ever do. So, I don't think, when I was, when that failure was happening at that time, I may have felt that, what if things were different? But now when I look back, I think, I would want to have those same failures, because, as I said, they teach you far more. And I think, and in fact, brings a lot of humility as well. Makes you recognize the role of factors that are beyond your control. What might be that one choice that was difficult for me? I think that when I look back, the choice to pursue a PhD, was a difficult one. I'm glad that I had a lot of support in that from my family. But among the various choices that I made, I think that was possibly the most difficult choice, because I was doing very well. I used to work in a financial institution, and I had already been noticed by none other than the CEO, even though I'd only worked for about a year and a half. So if I had continued there, very likely I might have done very well there. And my wife was also working in a very, very good company. We had bought a house in Bombay. A lot of, in some sense, we had sort of built a nest at that time, a small nest, and shaking off all that, to go and pursue, a PhD, living the life of a graduate student with, with meager earnings for 4 years. I think having to do homeworks again, attending classes, taking exams again, after having studied for 6 years already. I think that is something which, I think the academic part was not as hard as some of the personal dimensions. We were expecting, our first child at that time as well. So I think that is a choice that I think was by far the most difficult to make. But I am glad that, that we were able to make that choice because of a lot of support that I enjoyed. I look back at that, I think, as an important turning point in my life.
So, sir, would you agree with the statement that life is not about settling for the good things that you have in life, but more about striving about the greater good that you can achieve in life?
See, I don't want to generalize because, each person has, his or her own, way of living his or her own life, objectives. I don't think there's anything, sacrosanct about a particular individuals have to make their own choices. All I would recommend is that I think having clarity of objective about what you want to do in your life, how you want to live your life, and understanding yourself very well. What is it that makes you tick? What is it that gives you happiness? I think that is important. There is no one size, one way to cut the cloth. So I wouldn't generalize there. Each individual has to, think about his or her own, choices, what he or she wants to do in life, and reflect upon himself or herself, saying, what is it that I like? What is it that I enjoy? What is it that I'm good at? These things. But I think what may be useful is to recognize that eventually we make all these choices to be happy in life. I think if you understand that at a young age, and I had the good fortune of understanding that eventually what a human being pursues is happiness. And so everything else is a means to that. And so if you recognize that early and, learn it, whether it's money or whatever it is, all those are just means to that end of being happy. I think that helps in, bringing clarity of objectives, and also makes you think about what is it that makes you happy, what is it that, you would want to do in life.
So coming to our last question, sir. So there are, so as we all know that India is a young country, there are a lot of people who are in their colleges and schools and are about to enter their 20s. So what advice would you give to them on how to define their objective, on how to achieve clarity of objective so that they could look away from things like money and positions of power and so, but strive towards a greater good for the society and the country?
As I said, actually, firstly, I think, each person has to make his or her choices. Pursuing the greater good is something that gives me satisfaction, and may give many others such satisfaction. But there may be other people also who may want to pursue other things. I think each person has to think this for him, for himself or herself. What I would say is that, from my own life, it took me some time to understand, what I really enjoy, what I want to do. But what helped me is what I don't want to do, what I don't enjoy, what came to me earlier. And I think that's quite likely that, so even understanding and knowing what you don't like, what you don't enjoy is also a process to that, of eliminating and thereby coming to what you enjoy, what you want to do, and what's your objective. So I think eliminating that this is not my objective, this is not my objective, this is not my objective, is a process that can then take you to what actually might very well be your objective. Because it's not as if you wake up one day in the morning and you have all clarity. It actually happens gradually over, over time. So in therefore, eliminating things that you don't enjoy and that you don't think will be your objectives actually is, it helps. But what I would also recommend is, once you have that clarity, to have that courage of conviction to act on that. I think that is important. Many times we actually, do not act on those choices, and then, many times look back and live a life of regret, saying, oh, what if I had made those choices? So all I would say is that, when faced with, if there is something that you really want to do, there is something that you have clarity of, that this is my objective, act on it. I think that's the most important piece of advice that I would give you. I think a last bit of advice, especially given the situation, the pandemic that we are going through, is, I'll use a parallel. Think about, think about a juggler. I'm sure as kids we all have seen jugglers juggle with many different balls, but the juggler makes sure that none of the balls actually falls to the ground. In life we are also actually jugglers. We juggle with, personal life, career, health, friends, all kinds of different. What I would say is that, many of the balls that we juggle with are rubber balls, but there are two glass balls that are among these rubber balls. That is your health and your personal life. So I use this metaphor of glass balls because, if you take your eye off those glass balls, they'll fall to the ground and will shatter into pieces, and you will be collecting the pieces the rest of your life. So these two glass balls, which is your health and your personal life, I think you should never ever never take your eye off them. The other balls are all rubber balls. Even if they fall to the ground, they'll bounce back and you can collect them again and start juggling. But these two glass balls are something that you should never lose sight of. So I think that's the other piece of advice that I would give all of you.
Sir, I don't have words to, comprehend what I'm feeling now, because it's such a great feeling to listen to you and to get your words of wisdom. And I hope that all our participants and our audience, they would also have learned a lot of things from this interview. And now I'll hand over to Sid.
So we would now like to give the space to our worthy HOD, Dr. Gurminder Kaur ma'am, to share a vote of thanks with our guests and all our attendees.
Thank you, Sifti. Good afternoon to our very esteemed guest of today's session, Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, our Principal, Dr. K.V Singh, my worthy colleagues, and my dear students. Once a great man had said, feeling thankful and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. So I really feel honored to get this opportunity to put my gratitude into words by proposing a hearty vote of thanks. It has indeed been a pleasure and a privilege to get such pearls of wisdom from our Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Subramanian, on the topic Future of Economic Progress, Prospective Role of India. We could not have asked for a more learned and experienced person to guide us on the matters of economic and financial concern, especially in the light of the ongoing pandemic. Sir, your insights into the glorious past of India in terms of contribution to the world's GDP and the path you traced of Indian economic reforms from 1991 to the current period, making a shift from product market to factor market, have indeed really been an eye-opener for all of us. The discussion on the reforms taken up during the pandemic period, being labor market reforms and agricultural reforms, giving opportunities for ethical wealth creation, have indeed given us something to reflect upon. So thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time and taking such thought-provoking sessions with us. Your guidance to our young students about how to define their life goals, how to have clarity of focus, will definitely do them a lot of good in your life. And your heartful concessions about your experiences, your humbleness will definitely continue to inspire all of us, especially our young students. Thank you so much, sir. We have a lot of takeaways from you today. The mantra of life that you said, success comes a hard way. So we should wait. We should be willing to make sacrifices. We should be willing to do a lot in order to achieve that success. So thank you once again so much, sir. Now I would also like to express my gratitude to our principal, Dr. K.V Singh, for always encouraging and supporting us in organizing events of this kind, and my dear fellow colleagues for all their help and support. Furthermore, I would like to acknowledge and applaud the enormous efforts of our team URJA, the backbone of this program, for organizing events of this kind during a global pandemic and giving us opportunities to continuously learn and grow through engaging and illuminating sessions like this. And last but not the least, I would also like to thank all the participants, my fellow colleagues, students and all, for all their patient listening and thought-provoking questions. Thank you one and all. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you one and all. Over
Thank
to
you, ma'am, for your words of wisdom. We hope that this session has been enriching to all our attendees, but we have a lot more to offer and hope to have such more sessions in future as well. We thank each and everyone for being a part of today's session. Our honorable guest, Dr. K.V Subramanian sir, Principal sir, our faculty and fellow team members. Till then, stay home and stay safe with your families. Thank you.
Thank you.